Hello everyone, and welcome. In today's ASE A1 engine repair quick overview questions with explained answers practice session, we'll go through 138 updated questions designed to help you prepare for the exam. When each question appears, pause the video first. Choose the answer you believe is correct, then comment your answer below before resuming the video to see the correct answer. Keep track of your score as you move through the questions, and let's get started. Flashcard 1. Technician says that oil should be squirted into all of the cylinders before taking a compression test. Technician B says that if the compression greatly increases when some oil is squirted into the cylinders, it indicates defective or worn piston rings. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct that if the compression reading is greatly increased with a couple of squirts of oil in the cylinder, then when the compression test is first performed without the oil, the piston rings are worn or broken. Technician A is not correct because oil should only be squirted into those cylinders that achieved a lower than normal compression test reading to help determine the reason for the low compression. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 2. Two technicians are discussing oil leaks. Technician A says that an oil leak can be found using a fluorescent dye in the oil with a black light to check for leaks. Technician B says that a white spray powder can be used to locate oil leaks. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct that a fluorescent dye can be added to the engine oil and allowed to circulate. A black light is then turned on and any leaks will show as a bright yellow-green area. This is the preferred method for locating fluid leaks. Technician B is correct because a white powder spray such as foot spray will show the location of leaks by turning dark where the liquid contacts the white powder. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 3. Technician says that a worn stretched timing chain and worn gears will cause the valve timing to be retarded. Technician B says that if the timing chain slack is over 2 inches 13 millimeters, the timing chain and gears should be replaced. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A point timing is correct because as the timing chain stretches, the camshaft will lag behind the rotation of the crankshaft retarded. Technician B is correct because the timing chain and gears should all be replaced as a set if the slack is greater than factory specifications, usually less than 2 inches. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 4. Leaking antifreeze can be what color? A. Green B. Orange C. Red D. Any of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Antifreeze can be green older IAT type or phosphate organic acid technology, which is a dark green, as well as orange DEX cool or red Asian red. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because any of the colors could indicate a coolant antifreeze leak. Flashcard 5. An increase in oil viscosity can be due to blank. Aware metals in the oil. B. Fuel dilution of the oil. C. A clogged air filter. D. Any of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Small particles of steel, cast iron, and other metals in an engine can react chemically to increase the viscosity thickness of the oil. Answer B is not correct because if fuel were added to oil, it would become thinner, lower viscosity. Answer C is not correct because a clogged air filter does not have a direct effect on the viscosity of the oil. It is true that dirt could get into the oil, which will make the oil thicker, but this is not a direct result of the air filter itself. Answer D is not correct because it includes B and C, which are not correct. Flashcard 6. Oil is discovered inside the air cleaner assembly. Technician says that the cause could be excessive blow B past the piston rings. Technician B says that the cause could be a clogged PCV valve, hose, or passage. Which technician is correct? A. Technician A. B. Technician B. C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because if the piston rings are worn or defective, blow B gases will force oil fumes out of the PCV system inlet and into the air cleaner assembly. Technician B is correct because if the PCV valve or hose is clogged, all crankcase vapors have only one place to go, and that is through the PCV system inlet hose that gets its fresh air from the air cleaner assembly. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 7. Two technicians are discussing the cause of low oil pressure. Technician A says that a worn oil pump could be the cause. Technician B says that worn main or rod bearings could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a worn oil pump can cause low oil pressure. An oil pump wears because it is the only engine part that operates on unfiltered oil. Technician B is correct because worn bearings allow an excessive amount of oil to escape and return to the oil pan, resulting in a drop in oil pressure. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 8. A noisy valve train is being diagnosed. Technician says that the rocker arm may be adjusted too tightly. Technician B says that the rocker arm may be adjusted too loosely or may be worn. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because noise is created by the rocker arm pounding onto the end of the valve when the clearance lash is greater than specified by the vehicle manufacturer. Technician A is not correct because the engine will not create noise if the valve clearance is too tight. The valves may not close all the way if the clearance is too tight, which could lead to a burned valve. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 9. Two technicians are diagnosing a problem with an OHV V8 with flat bottom lifters. The valve covers have been removed and the engine is running. One pushrod is not rotating. Technician says that the camshaft is worn and must be replaced. Technician B says that the lifter is worn and must be replaced. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because it is the slight angle on the cam lobe that helps create a rotating force on flat-bottomed lifters. If the lobe is worn, the lifter and the pushrod will not rotate. Technician B is also correct because the bottom of a lifter is slightly convex, which helps rotate the lifter as it rides over the cam lobe. If the bottom of the lifter is worn, it will not rotate. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 10. A head gasket failure is being diagnosed. Technician says that an exhaust analyzer can be used to check for HC when the tester probe is held above the radiator coolant. Technician B says that a combustion tester liquid changes color in the presence of combustion gases. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and BD, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because if exhaust gases are escaping from the combustion chamber and into the coolant past a defective head gasket, HC hydrocarbons or CO carbon monoxide emissions will be able to be measured above the coolant with the engine running. Technician B is correct because combustion tester liquid that changes color when exposed to exhaust gases can also be used to verify a defective head gasket. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 11. Excessive exhaust system back pressure has been measured. Technician A says that the catalytic converter may be clogged. Technician B says that the muffler may be clogged. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and BD, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a clogged catalytic converter can be the cause of an exhaust system restriction. Technician B is correct because a clogged or damaged muffler can cause an exhaust system restriction. A muffler can be clogged by parts broken from the internal baffles. If the catalytic converter is replaced and the exhaust is still restricted, a clogged muffler or resonator could be the cause. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 12. Technician says that black exhaust smoke is an indication of a too rich air-fuel mixture. Technician B says that white smoke steam is an indication of coolant being burned in the engine. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and BD, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. White smoke or steam is an indication that coolant is getting into the combustion chamber and is being vaporized by the heat of combustion. Technician A is correct because an excessively rich air-fuel mixture will create black exhaust smoke. A slightly rich engine may not emit black smoke because the catalytic converter will usually oxidize the unburned fuel hydrocarbons into H2O water and CO2 carbon dioxide. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 13. Technician A says that cranking vacuum should be the same as idle vacuum. Technician B says that a sticking valve is indicated by a floating valve gauge needle reading. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and BD, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Neither technician is correct. Technician A is not correct because the specification for cranking vacuum is greater than 2.5 inches. HG. Even though a sound engine with a completely closed throttle may be able to produce 17 inches. HG to 21 inches. HG vacuum at sea level during cranking. It is not the specification for cranking vacuum. Technician B is not correct because a floating vacuum gauge needle is an indication of an overly rich or lean air-fuel mixture, not a sticking valve. A sticking valve will cause the vacuum gauge needle to move rapidly up and down. Answer C is not correct because neither technician is correct. Flashcard 14. Two technicians are discussing a cylinder power balance test. Technician A says the more the engine RPM drops, the weaker the cylinder. Technician B says that all cylinder RPM drops should be within 50 revolutions per minute of each other. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. All cylinders should drop the same within 50 revolutions per minute when they are cancelled or grounded out. This indicates that each cylinder was contributing an equal amount of the operation of the engine. If a cylinder drops the RPM less than others, the cylinder is weak. Technician is not correct because the more the engine RPM drops when a cylinder is cancelled, the more that cylinder is contributing to the operation of the engine. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 15. A cylinder leakage leak-down test indicates 30% leakage, and air is heard coming out of the air inlet. Technician says that this is a normal reading for a slightly worn engine. Technician B says that one or more intake valves are defective. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. A leakage of 30% is excessive, and if air is heard escaping from the engine air inlet, then one or more intake valves must be leaking. It is also possible that the cylinder being tested is not at TDC on the compression stroke. If the cylinder were at TDC of the exhaust stroke, both intake and exhaust valves would be open and air would also be heard coming from the tailpipe. Technician A is not correct because 30% leakage is too much for a slightly worn engine. Leakage should not exceed 20%. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 16. During a cylinder leakage leak-down test, air is noticed coming out of the oil fill opening. Technician says that the oil filter may be clogged. Technician B says that the piston rings may be worn or defective. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because if the piston rings were worn or broken, compressed air could escape past the rings and flow into the crankcase. The air would then escape from the engine through the oil drain back holes and other openings in the block and eventually be heard at the oil fill opening. Technician A is not correct because the oil filter is not being tested and the compressed air entering the combustion chamber could not get into or past the oil filter. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 17. The low oil pressure warning light usually comes on blank. Whenever an oil change is required. B. Whenever oil pressure drops dangerously low 3 to 7 psi. C. Whenever the oil filter bypass valve opens. D. Whenever the oil filter anti-drain back valve opens. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. The oil pressure light comes on whenever the pressure drops to between 3 and 7 psi. Answer A is not correct because the oil pressure light is not the same as the amber change oil soon light. Answer C is not correct because there is no indication when the bypass valve opens, which often occurs when the oil is cold or the oil filter is dirty and creates a restriction. Answer D is not correct because this valve simply keeps oil from draining back into the oil pan after the engine stops running. Flashcard 18. Two technicians are discussing a compression test. Technician says that the engine should be cranked over with the pressure gauge installed for 3 puffs. Technician B says that the maximum difference between the highest reading cylinder and the lowest reading cylinder should be 20%. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because the maximum difference, as specified by most vehicle manufacturers, is 20%. If the highest reading is 160 psi, then the lowest cylinder compression should be greater than 128 psi. 160 times 20% equals 32 psi. 160 psi 32 psi equals 128 psi. Technician A is not correct because the engine should be cranked through at least 4 compression events or 4 to 5 puffs, not 3 puffs. Answers C and D are not correct because only Technician B is correct. Flashcard 19. A compression test gave the following results: cylinder hash 1 equals 155, cylinder hash 2 equals 140, cylinder hash 3 equals 110, cylinder hash 4 equals 105. Technician says that a defective burned valve is the most likely cause. Technician B says that a leaking head gasket could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because if the head gasket were leaking between cylinder number 3 and 4, the compression on these cylinders would be lower than normal. The defective gasket would allow compression to escape to the adjacent cylinders. Technician A is not correct because a burned valve would only affect one cylinder. It would be very rare that 2 cylinders side by side would both have a burned valve and is, therefore, not a likely cause. Answers C and D are not correct because only Technician B is correct. Flashcard 20. An engine noise is being diagnosed. Technician says that a double knock is likely to be due to a worn rod bearing. Technician B says that a knock only when the engine is cold is usually due to a worn piston pin. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Neither technician is correct. Technician A is not correct because a double knock is usually caused by a worn piston pin, which causes one click when the piston stops at TDC and another as the crankshaft pulls the piston downward after reaching TDC. Technician B is not correct because a worn piston pin will make noise at all temperatures and not change when the cylinder is grounded out. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because neither technician is correct. Flashcard 21. 2 technicians are discussing how to perform a road test to verify the customer's concerns about noise from the engine. Technician A says that the owner should drive and the technician ride along to verify the problem. Technician B says that the vehicle should be driven next to a building to better hear engine noise as it bounces off the walls. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that both technicians A and B are correct. Technician A is correct because the customer can more easily drive the vehicle under the exact conditions, such as speed and throttle position, to create the noise concern. The technician can also concentrate on listening for the noise without having to worry about traffic conditions. Technician B is also correct because noise from the vehicle would tend to bounce off walls or buildings, making engine noise easier to hear. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 22. An engine equipped with a turbocharger is burning oil blue exhaust smoke all the time. Technician A says that a defective wastegate could be the cause. Technician B says that a plugged PCV system could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because if the PCV system were clogged, Crankcase pressure would increase and force oil into the combustion chamber through the air cleaner assembly where the PCV system normally receives fresh air. The increased crankcase pressure can also cause oil to be forced from the turbocharger bearing bushing area into the intake or exhaust side of the turbocharger. Technician A is not correct because the wastegate simply directs the exhaust through the turbocharger or into the exhaust manifold bypassing the turbocharger. If the wastegate were to fail, it could cause a lack of turbo boost or the possibility of overboost. An overboost condition could cause excessive oil consumption. It would not be a direct cause. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 23. An engine cranks rapidly but does not start. Technician says that a defective coil on a waste spark type ignition could be the cause. Technician B says that a broken timing belt could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct because the engine is cranking rapidly, which means that the engine lacks compression. A broken timing belt would allow many of the valves to be either closed all the time or partially open all the time. Answer A is not correct because even though a defective coil on a waste spark type ignition system could cause a misfire, it would not likely cause a no-start condition. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 24. An engine uses an excessive amount of oil. Technician says that clogged oil drain back holes in the cylinder head could be the cause. Technician B says that worn piston rings could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because if the oil drain back holes were clogged, oil would eventually cover the valves and oil would be drawn into the combustion chamber past the valve guides. Technician B is correct because oil can be drawn into the combustion chamber past the worn piston rings during the intake stroke. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 25. Two technicians are discussing engine and transmission/transaxle mounts. Technician says that a defective collapsed mount can cause an engine or driveline vibration. Technician B says that some mounts are fluid-filled and should be checked for leakage. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is C. Technician A is correct because a defective engine mount can cause the engine to be out of position in the vehicle, causing a vibration. Technician B is correct because some mounts are filled with fluid and should be inspected for leakage. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 26. An engine is misfiring. A power balance test indicates that when the spark to cylinder #4 is grounded, there is no change in the engine speed. Technician says that a burned valve is a possible cause. Technician B says that a defective cylinder #4 injector or spark plug wire could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a burned valve will cause the cylinder to produce less than normal power. Technician B is correct because a fault in either the injector or the spark plug wire can cause the cylinder to misfire. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 27. Technician says that white exhaust can be caused by a defective cylinder head gasket allowing coolant to enter the combustion chamber. Technician B says a leaking fuel injector can be the cause of white exhaust smoke. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is A. Technician A only is the correct answer. When coolant enters into the combustion chamber past a defective head gasket, the water turns to steam during the combustion process. This steam is then seen as white exhaust smoke when it exits the tailpipe. Answer B is not correct because a leaking fuel injector would cause a rich air-fuel mixture, which would cause black or gray exhaust smoke and not white smoke. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician A is correct. Flashcard 28. Cranking vacuum should be blank. At 2.5 inches Hg or higher, B over 25 inches Hg, C 17 to 21 inches Hg, D 6 to 16 inches Hg. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is A. Vacuum measured during cranking should be at least 2.5 inches Hg. Obviously, the higher the cranking vacuum, the better the engine cylinder is sealed. Answer B is not correct because the only time that vacuum in an engine can be near 25 inches Hg is during deceleration. Answer C is not correct because even though it is possible for some engines to produce 17 to 21 inches Hg during cranking, it should not be considered the specification for cranking vacuum. Answer D is not correct for the same reason as given for answer C. Flashcard 29. Technician says that during a power balance test, the cylinder that causes the biggest RPM drop is the weak cylinder. Technician B says that if one spark plug wire is grounded out and the engine speed does not drop, a weak or dead cylinder is indicated. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. If the engine speed RPM drops when a cylinder is cancelled, spark plug wire is grounded, the cylinder is producing power and contributing to the engine speed at idle. Answer A is not correct because the biggest drop in engine RPM is created by the strongest cylinder, not the weakest. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 30. A good reading for a cylinder leakage test would be blank. A within 20% among cylinders, B all cylinders below 20% leakage, C all cylinders above 20% leakage, D all cylinders above 70% leakage and within 7% of each other. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is B. A good mechanically sound engine should measure less than 20% leakage. The lower the amount of leakage, the better the engine. Answer A is not correct because all cylinders should be less than 20%, not within 20% of each other. Answer C is not correct because the leakage should be less than 20%, not more than 20%. Answer D is not correct because the leakage should be very low. A 70% leakage rate means that 70% of the air entering the cylinder is escaping past the piston rings or valves. Flashcard 31. A smoothly operating engine depends on blank. A high compression on most cylinders, B equal compression among cylinders, C cylinder compression levels above 100 psi 700 kPa and within 70 psi 500 kPa of each other, D compression levels below 100 psi 700 kPa on most cylinders. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is B. A good mechanically sound engine should measure less than 20% leakage. The lower the amount of leakage, the better the engine. Answer A is not correct because all cylinders should be less than 20%, not within 20% of each other. Answer C is not correct because the leakage should be less than 20%, not more than 20%. Answer D is not correct because the leakage should be very low. A 70% leakage rate means that 70% of the air entering the cylinder is escaping past the piston rings or valves. Flashcard 32. Technician says that the paper test, using a piece of paper held up to the tailpipe, could detect a burned valve. Technician B says that a grayish-white stain could be a coolant leak. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician is correct because any misfire will cause paper held at the tailpipe to puff. A burned valve will cause one cylinder to not produce as strong an exhaust stream as the others, creating the uneven exhaust detected by holding the paper at the tailpipe. Technician B is correct because antifreeze tends to leave a gray/white stain on the engine where coolant has leaked and then evaporated by the engine heat. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 33. Two technicians are discussing torquing cylinder head bolts. Technician says that many engine manufacturers recommend replacing the head bolts after their first use. Technician B says that many manufacturers recommend tightening the head bolts to a specific torque, then turning the bolts an additional number of degrees. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because many vehicle manufacturers recommend replacing the head bolts after use because they are stretched during use and cannot be reused. Technician B is correct because many vehicle manufacturers recommend an initial torque setting and then turning the fasteners additional degrees. This is called torque angle or torque yield method. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 34. Two technicians are discussing timing the camshaft to the crankshaft. Technician says that marks are often provided on the cam and crank gears or pulleys so that the engine can be properly timed. Technician B says that some engines use a camshaft sprocket or gear that is not keyed to the camshaft. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because most cam and crank gears or pulleys are equipped with a mark used to correctly time the camshaft/crankshaft timing. Technician B is also correct because some camshaft sprockets or gears are not keyed to the camshaft but are tightened in position. These types of camshafts require a special tool to properly by-mouth-position the camshaft before the retaining bolt is tightened. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 35. Cleaning chemicals are usually either an alkaline caustic material or an acid material. Which of the following statements is true? A. Both alkaline and acids have a pH of 7 if rated according to distilled water. B. An acid is lower than 7 and an alkaline is higher than 7 on the pH scale. C. An acid is higher than 7 and an alkaline is lower than 7 on the pH scale. D. Pure water is a 1 and a strong acid is a 14 on the pH scale. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is B. Pure water is a 7 on the pH scale with acids represented by numbers lower than 7 and caustic materials bases represented by numbers higher than 7. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because these statements do not correctly represent the pH scale. Flashcard 36. Many cleaning methods involve chemicals that are hazardous to use and expensive to dispose of after use. The least hazardous method is generally considered to be the blank dot A pyrolytic oven, B hot vapor tank, C hot soak tank, D cold soak tank. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. The pyrolytic oven is the least hazardous method of cleaning. Answers B, C, and D are not correct because the chemicals used in these cleaning methods represent hazards to the service technician during their use and may also create a hazardous waste problem. Flashcard 37. Magnetic crack detection blank dot A uses a red dye to detect cracks in aluminum. B uses equal compression among cylinders. C uses a fine iron powder to detect cracks in iron parts. D uses a magnet to remove cracks from iron parts. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Magnetic lines of force tend to get stronger at edges and, therefore, a fine powder can be used to locate cracks in iron parts. Answer A is not correct because aluminum parts cannot be checked using a magnetic field. Answer B is not correct because a magnetic method can be used on iron, but not on aluminum parts. Answer D is not correct because the answer states that the magnet removes the cracks rather than simply detecting the cracks. Flashcard 38. Technician A says that engine parts should be cleaned before a thorough test can be done to detect cracks. Technician B says that pressure testing can be used to find cracks in blocks or cylinder heads. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because the parts must be cleaned to be able to see small cracks or faults. Technician B is correct because pressure testing using air will detect cracks in engine parts that are underwater by observing bubbles from the fault area. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 39. A cylinder head should be removed by loosening the head bolts in which order? A. Any order as long as all bolts are removed. B. In the same order as the tightening sequence. C. In the reverse order of the tightening sequence. D. Loosen each a quarter of a turn and then 1/2 a turn in the same order as the tightening sequence. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that all engine part fasteners should be removed in the reverse order of the tightening sequence. This method helps reline any built-up stress in the part and helps reduce the possibility of warpage when the part is removed. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because any of these methods could result in warpage when the part is removed. Flashcard 40. Technician A says that damaged threads in a hole of a cylinder head can be repaired using a die. Technician B says that an insert may be required to restore a damaged thread. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. Damaged threads in a cylinder head may require that a thread repair insert be installed to allow a bolt to be used again in the threaded hole. Answer A is not correct because a die is used to make or repair threads on a rod and cannot be used to repair threads in a hole in the cylinder head. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 41. Pushrods should be checked for blank dot A weight, B straightness, C diameter, D all of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Most vehicle manufacturers specify that warpage and out of straightness of less than 0.002 inches. The best way to determine if the pushrods are straight is to roll them on a flat surface and check for any light under the pushrod as it is rolled. Answer A is not correct because the length would be affected if bent and are different length for different cylinders or valves in some engines. Answer C is not correct because the diameter is determined by the vehicle manufacturer and does not change with use. Answer D is not correct because only answer B is correct. Flashcard 42. A 0.015 inches feeler gauge is able to be inserted between the straight edge and the cylinder head. What should the service technician do? A. Reinstall on the engine if a copper gasket is used. B. Resurface or replace the cylinder head. C. Grind the valves and seats and reinstall the cylinder head on the engine. D. Clean the head surface with brake cleaner and sandpaper to remove any dirt and reinstall on the engine. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The cylinder head surface should be machined or the cylinder head replaced because the head is warped beyond the normal maximum allowed. Normal maximum warp age is less than 0.004 inches for a V8 cylinder head. Answer A is not correct because the cylinder head is distorted beyond specifications. Answer C is not correct because even though the valves and the seats can be ground, the cylinder head must still be resurfaced before it is installed on the engine. Answer D is not correct because using sandpaper will not straighten a warped cylinder head and may even cause waviness in the head after it has been properly resurfaced. Flashcard 43. The typical valve stem-to-valve guide clearance is blank. A 0.03 to 0.045 inches, 0.8 to 0.1 millimeters. B 0.015 to 0.02 inches, 0.4 to 0.5 millimeters. C 0.005 to 0.01 inches, 0.13 to 0.25 millimeters. D 0.001 to 0.003 inches, 0.03 to 0.08 millimeters. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Typical valve guide clearance is between 1 and 3/1000ths of an inch, 0.001 to 0.003 inches. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because these figures represent a much greater clearance than is generally accepted. Flashcard 44. Which statement is true about surface finish? A. Cast iron surfaces should be smoother than aluminum surfaces. B. The rougher the surface is, the higher the micro-inch finish measurement. C. The smoother the surface is, the higher the micro-inch finish measurement. D. A cylinder head should be a lot smoother than a crankshaft journal. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The higher the micro-inch finish measurement, the rougher the surface. For example, a surface finish of 90 microinches in is rougher than a surface that measures 30 meters in. Answer A is not correct because an aluminum surface should be slightly smoother than a cast iron surface, although the specifications are often close. Answer C is not correct because a smooth surface has a lower microinch finish measurement. Answer D is not correct because a crankshaft journal is smoother than a cylinder head surface. Flashcard 45. A valve should be discarded if the margin is less than blank after refacing a 0.001 inches, B 0.006 inches, C 0.03 inches, D 0.06 inches. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Most vehicle manufacturers recommend that the margin be at least 0.03 inches. Answers A and B are too small and could cause the valve to burn if used in an engine. Answer D is not correct because even though 0.06 inches could be used without harm in an engine, 0.06 inches is not the discard dimension. Flashcard 46. To lower and narrow a valve seat that has been cut at a 45-degree angle, use a cutter or stone of what angle? A 60 degrees B 45 degrees Celsius 30 degrees D 15 degrees. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. A 30-degree stone will remove material from the top part of the valve seat, which will narrow and lower the seat. Answer A is not correct because a 60-degree stone will cut the bottom of the seat, and while it too will narrow the seat will be raised as the 60-degree angle is being cut. Answer B is not correct because a 45-degree angle will simply widen the seat because it is the same angle as the seat. Answer D is not correct because it would narrow and lower the seat, but the low angle would remove more material around the seat than desirable. Flashcard 47. Valve spring inserts shims are designed to A increase installed height of the valve, B decrease stem height of the valve, C adjust the correct installed height, D decrease valve spring pressure to compensate for decreased installed height. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Valve spring inserts shims placed under valve springs restore the original spring height that was lengthened when the valves were ground and the valves moved upward in the head. Answer A is not correct because when installing a valve spring insert, the installed height of the spring would be decreased compressing the spring more rather than increased compressing the spring less. Answer B is not correct because the valve spring insert will not change the location of the tip stem height of the valve. Answer D is not correct because the valve spring insert would increase not decrease valve spring pressure to compensate for an increased not decreased installed height. Flashcard 48. When aligning the timing marks on an overhead valve cam and block engine, what is the most likely method? A. The timing mark on the camshaft should be at the 12 o'clock position and the mark on the crankshaft should be at the 6 o'clock position. B. The timing mark on the camshaft should be at the 12 o'clock position and the mark on the crankshaft should be at the 12 o'clock position. C. The timing mark on the camshaft should be at the 6 o'clock position and the mark on the crankshaft should be at the 12 o'clock position. D. The timing mark on the camshaft should be at the 6 o'clock position and the mark on the crankshaft should be at the 6 o'clock position. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. The crankshaft/camshaft relationship on most overhead valve engines involve aligning the two timing marks together with the camshaft mark at the 6 o'clock position and the crankshaft mark at the 12 o'clock position. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because they do not represent the usual position of the timing marks for an OHV engine. Flashcard 49. Umbrella-type valve stem seals A fit tightly onto the valve guide, B fit on the valve face to prevent combustion leaks, C fit tightly onto the valve stem, D lock under the valve retainer. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. An umbrella-type valve stem seal fits snugly on the stem of the valve and moves up and down with the valve. Answer A is not correct because umbrella seals are not attached to the guides like positive-type seals. Answer B is not correct because the valve seals are used on the stem of the valve, not on the head or a valve. Answer D is not correct because the O-ring-type valve stem seals are locked into place under the retainer, not umbrella-type seals. Flashcard 50. Many technicians always use new hollow pushrods because A. It is less expensive to buy than clean. B. All of the dirt cannot be cleaned out from the hollow center. C. Pushrods wear at both ends. D. Pushrods shrink in length if removed from an engine. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. It is almost impossible to remove all of the dirt or varnish from inside the hollow pushrods. If reused in a new or rebuilt engine, the trapped dirt or varnish may become dislodged and cause wear or damage to the engine parts. Answer A is not correct because the clean-in time or cost of replacement pushrods is not the reason why most engine rebuilders recommend the replacement rather than the cleaning of hollow pushrods. Answer C is not correct because even though they do wear, this is not the primary reason why they are replaced. Answer D is not correct because pushrods do not change length when removed from the engine. Flashcard 51. The cylinder head bolts should be tightened torqued in what general sequence? A. The 4 outside bolts first, then from the center out B. From the outside bolts to the inside bolts C. From the inside bolts to the outside bolts D. From the front of the engine and torquing bolts from front to rear. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. All fasteners should be tightened from the center of the component toward the outside to prevent stress buildup that could cause a cylinder head or other component being tight end to crack. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because they do not include tightening from the center outward. Flashcard 52. Most bolt torque specifications are for blank. A clean threads only, B clean and lubricated threads, C dirty threads, D new bolts with dry threads. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The torque specification for engine bolts prescribes that the threads are clean and lubricated with engine oil. Answer A is not correct because even though threads must be clean, they must also be lightly oiled. Answer C is not correct because dirty threads would interfere with proper rotating torque and result in less clamp force. Answer D is not correct because new bolts are not necessary for all engines and the threads should be lubricated, not dry. Flashcard 53. Before the valves are removed from the cylinder head, what operation is not needed to be done? A. Remove valve locks keepers. B. Remove cylinder head S from the engine. C. Remove burrs from the stem of the valve S. D. Remove the valve stem seals. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. The valve stem seals do not need to be removed to remove the valves from the cylinder head. Answer A is not correct because the keepers have to be removed before the valves will be released from the retainer. Answer B is not correct because the cylinder head from the block before the valves can be removed from the head. Answer C is not correct because the burrs should be removed from the stem of the valve to avoid damaging the guide. Flashcard 54. Technician says that all valve train parts that are to be reused should be kept together. Technician B says that before testing valve springs for tension, the damper spring should be removed if used. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because parts wear together and they should be kept together to avoid creating additional wear to the parts that contact each other. Technician B is correct because the valve spring tension specifications are for the valve spring only. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 55. An aluminum cylinder head is checked for warpage using a straight edge and a feeler thickness gauge. The amount of warpage on a V8 cylinder head was 0.002 inches, 0.05 millimeter. Technician A says that the cylinder head should be resurfaced. Technician B says that the cylinder head should be replaced. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Neither technician is correct. Technician A is not correct because 0.002 inches out of flatness is generally considered to be within factory specifications and, therefore, even though the cylinder head could be resurfaced, it would not be required. Technician B is not correct because replacement is not necessary if the cylinder head is within factory specifications. Answer C is not correct because neither technician is correct. Flashcard 56. Technician A says the valve guide should be reconditioned or replaced before the valve seats are reconditioned. Technician B says the valve seats should be replaced before replacing or reconditioning the valve guides. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Technician A only is correct because the valve guide must be straight and true because the guide is used to control the cutter for the seats. Technician B is not correct because the valve guide S should be serviced first since the tools used for seat conditioning are installed in the valve guide. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician A is correct. Flashcard 57. Technician A says that a dial indicator gauge is often used to measure valve guide wear by measuring the amount by which the valve head is able to move in the guide. Technician B says that a ball gauge can be used to measure the valve guide. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because some vehicle manufacturers specify that the valve be opened a certain distance and the play in the guide be measured at the edge of the head of the valve using a dial indicator. Technician B is correct because a ball gauge small hole gauge can be used to measure the inside diameter of the guide. The ball gauge is then measured with a micrometer. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 58. Technician A says that a worn valve guide can be reamed and a valve with an oversized stem can be used. Technician B says that a worn valve guide can be replaced with a bronze insert to restore the cylinder head to useful service. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because many vehicle manufacturers recommend that the old guide be reamed oversize and that oversized stem valves be used to restore the cylinder head to useful service. Technician B is correct because a bronze insert can be used to restore the guide and allow the use of the stock valves. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 59. Technician A says that worn integral guides can be repaired. Technician B says that worn integral guides can be replaced. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because worn integral guides to useful service by an automotive machine shop. Technician B is correct because replacement guides can be inserted in the cylinder head that has integral guides after the guides have been reamed to the proper size for the replacement guide. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 60. Valve guide is measured using a blank dot, a micrometer, B feeler gauge, C dial indicator, D plastic gauge. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. The valve guide clearance between is measured using a micrometer to measure the diameter of the valve stem and to measure the inside diameter of the valve guide that is determined using a small ball gauge. The difference between these two is the valve guide clearance. Answers B, C, and D are not correct because they cannot be used to measure the clearance between the valve stem and the valve guide. Flashcard 61. Before a valve spring is reused, it should be checked for blank. A squareness, B free height, C tension, D. All of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. A valve spring should be checked for squareness, proper free height, and tension. The tension should be checked at the designated height and without the dampener spring installed if equipped. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because all three are correct, so the best answer is D. Flashcard 62. Many manufacturers recommend that valves be ground with an interference angle. This angle is the difference between the blank. A valve margin and valve face angles, B valve face and valve seat angles, C valve guide and valve face angles, D valve head and margin angles. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The difference between the valve face angle and valve seat angle is called the interference angle, and it is usually specified as being 1 degrees. Answer A is not correct because the margin in the area above the valve face and this angle is not the interference angle. Answers C and D are also not correct because they do not describe the interference angle. Flashcard 63. Technician says that cooling system plugs in a cylinder head are usually driven in using a driver and a hammer. Technician B says that the cooling system plugs are usually threaded into the cylinder head. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B, D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Technician A only is correct. Plugs that are installed to cover the cooling passage opening, where the coarse sand was removed during production, are usually driven into the opening using a hammer and a driver. Answer B is not correct because the cooling passage openings are not threaded. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician A is correct. Flashcard 64. Coolant passages in the cylinder head should be inspected for blank. A corrosion, B restrictions, blockages, C leakage, D all of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is all of the above. The coolant passages in the cylinder head should be inspected for corrosion, restriction, blocking, or signs of leakage. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because all of the items listed should be checked. Flashcard 65. Technician says that valve stem height and installed height mean the same thing. Technician B says the installed height can be corrected by grinding the stem of the valve. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B, D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Neither technician is correct. Technician A is not correct because valve stem height is the distance from the spring seat to the top of the valve stem, whereas installed height is the distance from the valve seat to the bottom part of the valve spring retainer. Technician B is not correct because the valve stem height can be changed by grinding the stem, but not the installed height. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because neither technician is correct. Flashcard 66. Technician says that valve stem seals of the O-ring type are installed on top of the valve locks keepers. Technician B says that a vacuum pump can be used to determine if the valve stem seal is correctly seated. Which technician is correct? A only B, B only C, both A and B, D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. O-ring type valve stem seals can be checked using a hand-operated vacuum pump and a sealing cup to check whether the seal has been correctly installed. Technician is not correct because the O-ring is installed under the keeper, not on top of the keeper. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 67. Before the valves are removed from the cylinder head, what operations need to be completed? A. Remove valve keepers locks. B. Remove cylinder head S from the engine. C. Remove burrs from the stem of the valve S. D. All of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is D. All of the answers are correct. Before valves can be removed, the keepers have to be removed and the cylinder head has to be off of the block. To avoid damage to the grinder, any burrs on the valve stems should be removed before removing the valve from the head. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because all are correct and, therefore, answer D is the best answer. Flashcard 68. Technician says that the fluorescent penetrant test method can be used to detect cracks in iron, steel, or aluminum parts. Technician B says that the dye penetrant test can only be used with aluminum parts. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is A. Technician only is correct because fluorescent dye can be used on aluminum or iron parts to check for cracks. Technician B is not correct because even though it is commonly used to check aluminum parts, dye penetrant testing can also be used on iron parts. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician A is correct. Flashcard 69. The camshaft bore should be inspected on which type S of engines? A. Single overhead camshaft engines. B. Dual overhead camshaft engines. C. Hammond block engines. D. All of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is D. The camshaft bore should be inspected on all types of engines regardless of design. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because the camshaft bores on all types of engines should be inspected. Flashcard 70. What other engine component may have to be machined if the cylinder heads are machined on a V-type engine? A. Exhaust manifold. B. Intake manifold. C. Block deck. D. Distributor mount if the vehicle is so equipped. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. The intake manifold may require machining to fit onto the cylinder heads after they have been machined. A formula is used to determine the amount that needs to be removed to allow the intake manifold to align properly with the parts in the head. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because these surfaces do not have to be machined when the cylinder heads are machined. Flashcard 71. A cylinder head is being installed. Technician says to use a form-in-place sealant between the block and the head. Technician B says that the front on a head gasket indicates that it should be installed toward the auxiliary drive belt end of the engine. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. A head gasket is labeled front if it has to be placed on the block correctly to avoid blocking coolant passages. The word front does mean toward the front of the engine, which is the accessory drive belt end. Answer A is not correct because form-in-place sealant is only used to seal parts that experience low pressure and are not designed to take the place of a cylinder head gasket. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 72. The torque angle method involves blank dot A turning all bolts the same number of turns, B torquing to specifications and loosening by a specified number of degrees, C torquing to 1/2 specifications, then to 3/4 torque, then to full torque, D turning bolts a specified number of degrees after initial torque. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. The torque angle method of tightening involves torquing the fasteners to a specified torque and then turning them a specified number of degrees. Answer A is not correct because even though all bolts should be turned the same number of degrees, not turns, this answer does not include a specified initial torque as a starting point. Answer B is not correct because this answer includes loosening the fasteners after torquing instead of tightening after the initial torquing. Answer C is the usual method to tighten the fastener using a torque wrench instead of using the torque angle method as specified in the question. Flashcard 73. Piston ring end gap can be increased by blank dot A filing the ring to make the gap larger, B installing oversized rings, C sleeving the cylinder, D knurling the piston. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. The piston ring end gap can be increased by filing the ends of the piston ring. Answer B is not correct because oversized rings would decrease the piston ring end gap. Answer C is not correct because a sleeve is used to restore the cylinder, and while a slightly larger bore would cause the piston ring end gap to increase, the installation of a sleeve by itself would not necessarily increase piston ring end gap. Answer D is not correct because knurling the piston would increase the diameter of the piston skirt and would not increase the piston ring end gap. Flashcard 74. The most common cause of premature bearing failure is blank dot A misassembly, B dirt, C lack of lubrication, D overloading. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. According to engine bearing manufacturers, the most common cause of premature bearing failure is dirt. Answers A, C, and D are each a possible cause of premature engine bearing failure, but they are not the most common cause. Flashcard 75. To check a crankshaft journal for taper and out of round, the journal should be measured in at least how many locations? A. 1B, 2C, 4D, 6. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. To check for taper, the crankshaft journal has to be measured at a minimum of 6 locations. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because when measuring taper, there must be at least 2 measurements so the difference taper can be determined, and this does not allow enough measurements to determine out of round. To be able to determine accurately whether or not a crankshaft journal is out of round or tapered, at least 6 measurements must be taken 120 degrees apart. Flashcard 76. Piston ring end gap should only be measured blank dot after all cylinder work has been performed, B after installing the piston in the cylinder, C after installing the rings on the piston, D both A and C. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. The cylinder should be bored and or honed and thoroughly cleaned before the piston ring end gap is checked. Answers B, C, and D are not correct because the ring gap cannot be checked after the piston has been installed in the cylinder. Flashcard 77. Piston ring side clearance is a measure taken between the blank and the blank dot A piston side skirt, cylinder wall, B piston pin retainer clip, C piston ring land, D compression ring, oil control ring. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. The side clearance is between the piston ring and piston ring groove. This clearance allows the piston ring to twist during engine operation. Answer A is not correct because this is the piston to cylinder wall clearance, not the piston ring side clearance. Answers B and D are not correct because they do not represent the difference between the piston ring and the piston ring groove. Flashcard 78. Before the timing chain on an OHV engine can be inspected and removed, the following component S must be removed. A. Valve cover rocker arm cover. B. Vibration damper. C. Cylinder head. SD. Intake manifold. V-type engines only. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The vibration damper harmonic balancer has to be removed on an OHV engine to gain access to the timing gear and chain. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because removing the valve cover, cylinder head, or intake manifold will not allow access to the timing chain. Flashcard 79. Lower than normal oil pressure could be caused by blank. A worn oil pump. B. Worn rod bearings. C. Worn main bearing. D. Any of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Answer A is correct because lower than normal oil pressure can be caused by a worn oil pump because it may not be able to supply enough oil to keep the bearing clearance filled with oil. Answers B and C are correct because if the rod bearings were worn, an excessive amount of engine oil can escape from between the bearing and the crankshaft journal, thereby reducing oil pressure. Flashcard 80. The ridge at the top of the cylinder blank. Is caused by wear at the top of the cylinder by the rings. B represents a failure of the top piston ring to correctly seal against the cylinder wall. C should not be removed before removing pistons except when reboring the cylinders. D means that a crankshaft with an incorrect stroke was installed in the engine. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. The ridge is the untouched area original diameter of the cylinder above where the piston rings contact the sides of the cylinder. Answer B is not correct because the top piston ring has been contacting the cylinder wall. Answer C is not correct because the ridge should be removed before removing the piston to avoid damage to the pistons. Answer D is not correct because the ridge is normal wear due to the piston ring and does not indicate that the stroke of the crankshaft is not correct. Flashcard 81. Technician says that the dye penetrant test method can be used to detect cracks in iron, steel, or aluminum parts. Technician B says that the dye penetrant test can only be used with aluminum parts. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is technician A is correct. Dye penetrant is primarily used to check pistons and other non-magnetic materials for cracks, but it can be used to check iron and steel parts. Answer B is not correct because even though these are other methods that can be used to check iron and steel parts for cracks, the dye penetrant method can be used on other materials besides aluminum. Answers C and D are not correct because they do not state that technician only is correct. Flashcard 82. Connecting rod caps should be marked if they were not marked at the factory before the piston and connecting rod assembly is removed from the engine blank. A because they are balanced together. B because they are machined together. C to make certain that the heavier rod is matched to the heavier piston. D to make certain that the lighter rod is matched to the lighter piston. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The rod and cap are machined together and then separated. They should always be kept together and the cap reattached in the proper direction. Answer A balanced together is a true statement, but the weight would not be the same if the cap was reinstalled backward. It is for this reason that the two are machined together. Answers C and D are not correct because the rod cap and rod itself are being discussed, not the rod piston assembly. Flashcard 83. Protective covers should be placed over the connecting rod threads to help prevent damage to the blank. A connecting rod. B crankshaft. C cylinder wall. D camshaft. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. While the protective caps would protect all parts of the engine, the most likely part to be damaged is the crankshaft as the piston rod assembly is being installed into the engine. Answers A, C, and D are not correct because B is the best answer. Flashcard 84. A misaligned connecting rod causes what type of engine wear? A. Cylinder taper. B. Barrel-shaped cylinders. C. Ridge wear. D. Angle wear on the piston skirt. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. If the connecting rod is bent or misaligned, it creates an angled force applied to the piston as it moves up and down in the cylinder, creating angled wear. Answer A is not correct because a tapered cylinder is caused by normal wear of the piston rings against the cylinder wall. Answer B is not correct because crankshaft journals can wear in a barrel shape, but not cylinders. Answer C is not correct because a ridge is normally created in a high-mileage engine due to wear created by the piston rings. Flashcard 85. The diameter of the piston is measured blank dot across the top head of the piston, B across the piston pin, C across the thrust surface, D between the top and second piston ring. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. The diameter of a piston is measured 90 degrees from the piston pin across the thrust surface. Answer A is not correct because the head of the piston is smaller in diameter than the lower part of the piston to allow for heat expansion. Answers B and D are not correct. Flashcard 86. A worn piston pin causes what type of problem? A. Engine burns an excessive amount of oil blue smoke. B. Engine produces a knocking noise that will disappear if the cylinder is grounded out. C. Engine produces a double knocking noise that will not disappear if the cylinder is grounded out. D. Engine knock when warm only. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. A worn piston pin will cause a double knock sound. The first sound occurs when the piston stops at top dead center, and the second sound occurs as the piston is pulled downward by the connecting rod after top dead center. Answer A is not correct because piston rings and valve stem seals are used to control oil consumption. Answer B is not correct because unlike a rod bearing, the noise of a piston pin does not stop when the cylinder is grounded out. Answer D is not correct because it often occurs when the engine is cold. Flashcard 87. Two technicians are discussing removing and installing a crankshaft vibration damper harmonic balancer. Technician A says that a puller is often needed to remove a vibration damper. Technician B says that an installation tool is often needed to install a vibration damper. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Many crankshaft vibration dampeners harmonic balancers are a light press fit on the end of the crankshaft, which requires the use of a puller to safely remove and an installation tool to safely install to prevent causing damage to the balancer. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 88. The typical journal to bearing clearance is blank. A 0.00015 to 0.00018 inches, B 0.0005 to 0.0025 inches, C 0.15 to 0.25 inches, D 0.02 to 0.035 inches. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Most bearing oil clearance specifications are usually close to 0.001 seconds to 0.003 seconds and 0.0005 seconds 1/2,000th to 0.0025 seconds 2 1/2,000th is a typical clearance specification. Answer A is too small a clearance, and answers C and D represent too much clearance. Flashcard 89. Camshaft bearings in a cam and block engine are being discussed. Technician A says that plastigage should be used to check for proper bearing clearance. Technician B says that a special tool is required to install cam bearings in a cam and block engine. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. The cam bearings used in a cam and block engine requires the use of a long tool that holds the cam bearing so it can be properly placed and then driven into location. Answer A is not correct because the cam bearings used in a cam and block engine are full round and are not two sections where plastigage can be used. Bearing clearance is determined by measuring the inside diameter of the bearing and subtracting the outside diameter of the camshaft bearing journal. Answers C and D are not correct because technician B only is correct. Flashcard 90. Typical piston to cylinder clearance is blank. A 0.001 to 0.003 inches, B 0.01 to 0.023 inches, C 0.1 to 0.15 inches, D 0.18 to 0.23 inches. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is A. Typical piston to cylinder clearance is 1 to 3,000th of an inch, 0.001 seconds to 0.003 seconds, which is the best answer. Answers B, C, and D are too great a clearance. Flashcard 91. If the gauging plastic strip plastigage registered is wider than specified after the bearings are tightened, this results blank. An excessive oil clearance, B from using old, dried plastigage, C insufficient oil clearance, D in a small side thrust clearance. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is C. If the plastigage strip has been squeezed so that it is wider than specified, the oil clearance is insufficient. Answer A is not correct because a large oil clearance will not squeeze the plastic strip as much and the clearance will be larger than specified. Answer B is not correct because, even though this could cause an inaccurate reading, the best answer is still C. Answer D is not correct because side clearance is not measured using plastigage. Flashcard 92. Typical thrust bearing clearance is A 0.001 to 0.003 inches, B 0.002 to 0.012 inches, C 0.025 to 0.035 inches, D 0.05 to 0.1 inches. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is B. Most engine manufacturers specify a crankshaft thrust bearing clearance between 2 and 12,000th of an inch, 0.002 inches to 0.012 inches. Answer A is not correct because this clearance is too small. Answers C and D are not correct because they are too great and usually outside of the specified measurements for thrust bearing clearance. Flashcard 93. A 0.01 inches feeler gauge is able to slide between the straight edge and the main bearing bore saddle bore. Technician A says that the block should be replaced. Technician B says that oversized main bearings should be used. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is, the correct answer is D. Neither technician is correct. Technician A is not correct because the block can be restored to useful service if it is line bored or honed. Technician B is not correct because oversized bearings will not restore the alignment of the main bearing bores. Answers A, B, and C are not correct because neither technician is correct. Flashcard 94. If the bell housing is not properly torqued to the engine block, blank dot of the bell housing will distort. B. The engine block will crack. C. The rear cylinder can be distorted, become out of round. D. The crankshaft will crack. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. The rear cylinder S can become distorted if the bell housing bolts are not properly torqued. Answer A is not correct because, even though it may be possible to distort the bell housing, the most correct and most important reason for torquing the bell housing is to prevent distortion of the block. Answer B is not correct because while cracking the block may be possible, it is very unlikely to occur. Answer D is not correct because the crankshaft is not affected when the bell housing is being attached to the back of the engine block. Flashcard 95. If the bore of an engine is increased without any other changes except for the change to proper size replacement pistons, the displacement will blank and the compression ratio will blank dot A increase B increase, decrease C decrease, increase D decrease, decrease. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Both the compression and the displacement will be increased if the cylinder bore is increased. When the cylinder bore is increased, the volume of the cylinder is increased when the piston is at bottom dead center, yet the combustion chamber volume has not been increased, so the larger cylinder volume is being compressed into the same volume when the piston is at top dead center. Answer B is not correct because while the displacement will increase, the compression rate will be increased instead of being decreased. Answer C is not correct because the displacement is increased when the bore cylinder diameter is increased. Answer D is not correct because both are increased, not decreased. Flashcard 96. Technician says that pistons should be removed from the crankshaft side bottom of the cylinder when disassembling an engine to prevent possible piston or cylinder damage. Technician B says that the rod assembly should be marked before disassembly. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because the connecting rod and cap should be marked for proper reassembly if they are not marked at the factory. Technician A is not correct because while it may be possible to do this on some engines, damage to the piston could still occur as it passes the lower part of the cylinder that may be rusted or corroded. Answers C and D are not correct because technician B is correct. Flashcard 97. A cylinder is 0.004 inches out of round. Technician says that the block should be bored and oversized pistons installed. Technician B says that oversized piston rings should be used. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Technician A is correct. It is wise to bore the cylinder to an oversize and use an oversized piston in any engine that has a cylinder that is out of round by 0.004 inches. Most factory specifications call for a maximum out of round of 0.0015 inches or less. All cylinders should have the same bore, so all cylinders should be bored to the same size. Technician B is not correct because the out of round of the cylinder is excessive according to most vehicle manufacturers' specifications. Answers C and D are not correct because technician A is correct. Flashcard 98. After the engine block has been machined, the block should be cleaned with a stiff brush and soap and water B a clean cloth and engine oil C. WD-40D spray solvent washer. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Soap or detergent and water should be used to clean a block after machining because the soap suds will lift any grit remaining in the machine grooves. Answer B is not correct because while a clean cloth and engine oil can be used to prepare an engine block for assembly, it will not remove the grit from the small grooves left from the machining or grinding operation. Answer C is not correct because WD-40 will help prevent rust from forming, but it will not clean as well as soap and water. Answer D is not correct because it requires the soap or detergent and water rather than a solvent oil-based product to lift the grit from the block surfaces. Flashcard 99. Technician says that piston rings should be installed with the dot or mark up toward the cylinder head. Technician B says that the mark on the piston rings is used to identify the position groove in which the ring should be installed. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because the mark on the piston rings usually indicates the upward direction, so the ring will twist correctly in the groove during engine operation. Technician B is correct because the mark may be different between the top and the second ring. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 100. Two technicians are discussing ring gap. Technician says that the ring should be checked in the same cylinder in which it is to be installed. Technician B says that the ends of the piston ring can be filed if the clearance is too small. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician is correct because the cylinder bore diameter can vary slightly and the end gap of the piston ring should always be checked in the cylinder in which it is to be installed to make sure that the gap is within factory specifications. Technician B is correct because the end gap can be increased by filing the ends of the ring using a hand file or a rotary ring gap filing tool. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 101. Two technicians are discussing bearing clearance measurement. Technician says that the main and rod bearing clearance can be measured with plastic gauging material plastic gauge. Technician B says that the engine crankshaft should be rotated for 2 complete revolutions when plastic gauge is used between the crankshaft and the main or rod bearings. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Technician A only is correct. The oil bearing clearance can be checked using plastic gauge material plastic gauge. While some vehicle manufacturers recommend that direct measurement of the bearings as installed be subtracted from the diameter of the bearing journal to determine the oil clearance, it is possible to use plastic gauge. Answer B is not correct because the crankshaft should not be rotated when the plastic gauge is being used. Answers C and D are not correct because technician A only is correct. Flashcard 102. When pistons are installed in the block, the notch or arrow on the piston should be facing blank dot A toward the lifter side of the block, B toward the front of the engine, C toward the rear of the engine, D away from the lifter side of the block. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The notch, arrow, or other mark on a piston should be installed facing toward the front accessory drive belt end of the engine. The piston pin is offset on many pistons and this ensures that the piston is correctly installed. Answer A is not correct because the piston mark cannot be pointed toward the side of the engine. Answer C is not correct as explained for answer B. Answer D is not correct because the arrow should face the front of the engine. Flashcard 103. A bearing shell is being installed in a connecting rod. The end of the bearing is slightly above the parting line. Technician A says that this is normal. Technician B says that the bearing is too big. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is A only is correct. The insert bearing should extend slightly above the bearing cap to provide the necessary crush when assembled to keep the bearing from spinning during engine operation. Answer B is not correct because the bearing size is determined by the thickness of the insert, and the difference between a standard and a 0.01 inches undersize bearing thicker shell insert may not be visible. Answers C and D are not correct because they do not indicate that technician only is correct. Flashcard 104. A water pump has been replaced 3 times in 3 months on a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Technician says that the drive belt S may be installed too tightly. Technician B says that a cooling fan may be bent or out of balance. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because the drive belt S could have been installed and tightened too tightly, creating an excessive force on the water pump bearing. Technician B is also correct because the cooling fan blade S may be bent, causing a vibration, which could also damage the water pump bearing. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 105. As the percentage of antifreeze in the coolant increases, blank dot of the freeze point decreases up to a point B, the boiling point decreases, C the heat transfer increases, D all of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is A. The freezing point of the coolant decreases as the percentage of antifreeze increases up to a point about 70%, and then it starts to increase. Antifreeze by itself freezes at about 0 C. Answer B is not correct because the boiling point increases rather than decreases as the percentage of antifreeze is increased. Answer C is not correct because the heat transferability of the coolant is decreased as the percentage of antifreeze is increased in the coolant. Answer D is not correct because answers B and C are not correct. Flashcard 106. The procedure that should be used when refilling an empty cooling system includes the following: blank dot a determine capacity, and then fill the cooling system half with antifreeze and the rest of the way with water. B fill completely with antifreeze, but mix a 50/50 solution for the overflow bottle. C fill the block and 1/2 of the radiator with 100% pure antifreeze and fill the rest of the radiator with water. D fill the radiator with antifreeze, start the engine, drain the radiator, and refill with a 50/50 mixture of antifreeze and water. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is A. Most vehicle manufacturers recommend that a 50/50 mix of antifreeze and water be used for the cooling system. Filling half the system with 100% antifreeze and the rest with water will result in a 50/50 mix. Answers B and C are not correct because these methods will not result in a 50/50 antifreeze to water mix. Answer D will result in a 50/50 mix if all of the coolant can be drained from the system before refilling it with a 50/50 mix. However, this method uses more antifreeze coolant than is necessary and, therefore, is not the recommended method and not the best answer to this question. Flashcard 107. Which statement is true about thermostats? A. The temperature marked on the thermostat is the temperature at which the thermostat should be fully open. B. Thermostats often cause overheating. C. The temperature marked on the thermostat is the temperature at which the thermostat should start to open. D. Both A and B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is The correct answer is C. The temperature on the thermostat is the temperature that it starts to open and is fully opened about 20 degrees higher. Answer A is not correct because the temperature on the thermostat is when it starts to open, not when it is fully open. Answer B is not correct because even though thermostats can cause overheating, they most often fail in the open position, causing the engine to not reach operating temperature. Answer D is not correct because it involves both answers A and B, which were not correct. Flashcard 108. Technician says that the radiator should always be inspected for leaks and proper flow before installing a rebuilt engine. Technician B says that overheating during slow city driving can be due to a defective electric cooling fan. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because the radiator should always be checked for proper operation before using it in a vehicle with a new or rebuilt engine. Technician B is correct because an inoperative electric cooling fan can cause overheating during slow city driving. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 109. Technician says the positive crankcase ventilation PCV system uses a valve located between the intake manifold and the valve cover cylinder head cover. Technician B says that about 20% of the air needed by the engine at idle speed flows through the PCV system. Which technician is correct? A only B only C, both A and B D, neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because the PCV valve is located between the intake manifold and the valve cylinder head cover. Technician B is correct because about 20% of the air needed by the engine at idle speed flows through the PCV valve. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 110. Turning the oil pump before starting the engine should be done blank. A to lubricate engine bearings, B to lubricate valve train components, C to supply oil to the camshaft, D. All of the above. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is D. Answer A is correct because the oil pump should be rotated before starting the engine after a rebuild to lubricate the bearings as well as the valve train components. Answer B including the camshaft. Answer C. Flashcard 111. An engine oil cooler should be inspected for blank. A engine oil leaks, B coolant leaks, C air leaks, D. Both A and B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is D. Both answers A and B are correct. Answer A is correct because an engine oil cooler has engine oil circulated through the passages and these passages should not leak oil. Answer B is correct because most engine oil coolers use engine coolant to cool as well as warm the engine coil. Coolant should not leak from the cooler or any of the lines or fittings. Answer C is not correct because air is not used in most engine oil coolers and if so, would be just passing through the cooling fins and an air leak is not a factor. Flashcard 112. Which antifreeze coolant should be used if the manufacturer specifies coolant that is both silicate and phosphate free? A. Organic acid technology OAT, e.g. DEX Cool Orange, B. Ethylene glycol green, C. Asian red, D. European pink. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is the correct answer is A. Coolant that uses organic acid technology such as DEX Cool does not contain any silicates or phosphates. Answers B, C, and D all contain either silicates or phosphates. Flashcard 113. The hot light on the dash is being discussed by two technicians. Technician says that the light comes on if the cooling system temperature is too high for safe operation of the engine. Technician B says that the light comes on whenever there is a decreased drop in cooling system pressure. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. Technician is correct because the HOT light engine coolant temperature warning lamp will come on about 258 OF 125 OC to warn the driver that the engine coolant temperature is too high for safe engine operation. Technician B is not correct because the warning light does not react to cooling system pressure, just temperature. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician A is correct. Flashcard 114. Technician says that an electric cooling fan should come on at the same temperature that the thermostat opens. Technician B says that a defective electric fan can cause overheating, especially in city driving. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. The purpose and function of the electric cooling fan is to provide airflow through the radiator at low vehicle speeds. When the vehicle exceeds about 35 miles per hour, 56 kilometers per hour, there is enough airflow to keep the engine cool and the electric cooling fan shuts off. If the electric cooling fan is not operating, the engine could overheat during slow city-type driving conditions. Answer A is not correct because the thermostat opens about 20 degrees lower than the temperature that is fully open, and the cooling fan will come on at a higher than the fully open temperature of the thermostat. Answer C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 115. A customer complains that the heater works sometimes, but sometimes only cold air comes out while driving. Technician A says that the water pump is defective. Technician B says that the cooling system could be low on coolant. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because the heater will have coolant flowing through the core when the water pump is operating slowly, such as during engine idle. However, when the engine speed increases, the coolant will be taking the path of lower resistance and bypass the heater core unless the coolant level is properly filled. Technician A is not correct because even though the water pump could have worn the impeller blades, the most likely cause is low coolant level. Answers C and D are not correct because only technician B is correct. Flashcard 116. Normal operating temperature is reached when blank dot of the radiator cap releases coolant into the overflow. B. The upper radiator hose is hot and pressurized. C. The electric cooling fan has cycled at least once if the vehicle is so equipped. D. Either B or C occur. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is D. Answer D is correct because normal operating temperature causes the upper hose to become hot and pressurized and will cause the cooling fans to cycle on and off. Answer A is not correct because the radiator cap will only release coolant to the overflow if the pressure exceeds the rating of the cap and does not represent what normally occurs when the engine reaches normal operating temperature. Answers B and C are not correct alone because either can be an indication of when normal operating temperature has been achieved and, therefore, answer D is the best answer. Flashcard 117. For best results, the oil should be drained when the engine is blank. A. At normal operating temperature. B. At room temperature. C. Cold, not yet started. D. Run for 30 seconds, then turned off before draining the oil. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is A. The engine oil flows best when it is warm and also is able to hold dirt in suspension best at normal operating temperature. Answers B and C are not correct because the oil can hold more dirt and flow best if the oil is at normal operating temperature. Answer D is not correct because this procedure will not ensure that the oil is at normal operating temperature. Flashcard 118. Two technicians are discussing engine oil. Technician says that the higher the viscosity, the better. Technician B says that a SAE 20W50 will work better in a new vehicle instead of the specified SAE 5W20. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is D. Neither technician is correct. The thickness viscosity is the measure of the resistance to flow and is not an indicator of quality. The API rating indicates quality. Technician A is not correct because even though a thicker oil higher viscosity may cause an increase in oil pressure, the thickness of the oil is not an indication of quality. The higher viscosity could keep vital engine parts from receiving oil at start-up, especially in cold weather. Technician B is not correct because a higher viscosity oil would decrease fuel economy and is not recommended by the vehicle manufacturers in most cases. Answer C is not correct because both technicians are wrong. Flashcard 119. Normal oil pump pressure in an engine is blank. A 3 to 7 psi, B 10 to 60 psi, C 100 to 150 psi, D 180 to 210 psi. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Normal oil pressure is generally 10 psi per 1000 revolutions per minute and, therefore, oil pressure between 10 psi and 60 psi would be the best answer. Answer A is not correct because the pressure is too low and represents the oil pressure that could turn on the oil pressure warning light but is not high enough to be considered normal. Answers C and D are both too high for normal oil pressure. Flashcard 120. In typical engine lubrication systems, what components are the last to receive oil? A. Main bearings. B. Rod bearings. C. Valve trains. D. Oil filters. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. The valves components are the last to receive oil from the oil pump. The oil first flows to bearings cam, main, and rod and then to the rocker arms. Answer A is not correct because the main bearings are usually one of the first components to receive oil after it leaves the oil pump. Answer B is not correct because the rod bearings receive engine oil from the main bearings and are one of the first locations in the engine to receive oil. Answer D is not correct because the oil filter is the first place the oil is pumped when leaving the oil pump. Flashcard 121. An engine cranks but will not start. No spark is available at the end of a spark plug wire with a spark tester connected and the engine cranked. Technician says that a defective crankshaft position CKP sensor could be the cause. Technician B says that a defective ignition module could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a defective crankshaft position CKP sensor will prevent the necessary signal to the ignition module to trigger the ignition coil, which would cause a no spark condition. Technician B is also correct because a defective ignition module can cause a no spark condition. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 122. Two technicians are discussing a waste spark type of ignition system. Technician A says that a defective coil can cause a crank, but no start condition. Technician B says that a defective coil could affect the spark output to two spark plugs. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B is correct because each coil fires 2 spark plugs at the same time. If the coil is defective and not capable of supplying a spark, both spark plugs attached to the coil will not fire. Answer A is not correct because even if 2 spark plugs will not fire, most engines will still start and run, even though the engine will not produce normal power. Answers C and D are not correct because technician B only is correct. Flashcard 123. Battery voltage during cranking is below specifications. Technician A says that a defect in the engine may be the cause. Technician B says that the starter motor may be defective. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a fault in the engine itself, such as worn bearings or other mechanical fault, can cause the engine to require a greater force to rotate. Technician B is also correct because a defective starter motor will often draw an excessive amount of current from the battery, thereby reducing the battery voltage during cranking. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because they do not include that both technicians are correct. Flashcard 124. Technician A says that a leaking intake manifold gasket can cause a vacuum leak. Technician B says that a clogged air filter can cause a low power concern. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because air can enter through a gap in the intake manifold, which is called a vacuum leak. Technician B is correct because a reduction in the amount of air entering the engine is similar to what occurs if the throttle plate is not opened. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 125. A starter motor cranks the engine too slowly to start. Technician A says that the cause could be a weak or defective battery. Technician B says that the cause could be loose or corroded battery cable connections. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a weak or defective battery will cause a starter to rotate slower than normal. Technician B is also correct because a loose or corroded battery cable will cause a voltage drop in the cranking circuit, which will reduce the current flow to the starter. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because they do not include that both technicians are correct. Flashcard 126. Technician A says that a clogged port fuel injector can cause a misfire. Technician B says that a leaking injector lower O-ring can cause a vacuum leak. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because a clogged port fuel injector can cause a lack of fuel to one cylinder, which would cause a misfire condition. Technician B is correct because a leaking lower injector O-ring will cause outside air to enter the intake manifold. Air leaking into the intake manifold is commonly called a vacuum leak. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 127. Which computer sensor may have to be replaced if the engine had been found to have a defective head gasket or cracked head? A. Throttle position sensor. B. Oxygen sensor. C. Manifold absolute pressure sensor. D. Engine coolant temperature sensor. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is B. The oxygen sensor should be replaced if the engine has a blown head gasket. Additives in conventional coolant such as silicates and phosphates can coat the oxygen sensor, causing the sensor to incorrectly sense the oxygen content in the exhaust. Answer A is not correct because the throttle position sensor would not be directly related to a fault with the head gasket nor be affected by the condition, as would the oxygen sensor. Answer C is not correct because a blown head gasket would not affect the MAP sensor directly. While it is possible for some coolant to get into the sensor through the intake system, this would be very unlikely. Answer D is not correct because a blown head gasket would not affect the ECT sensor since it is already exposed to coolant normally. A defective ECT sensor could be the cause of the blown head gasket if it had not accurately measured engine coolant temperature. Flashcard 128. Technician says that a defective PCV valve could cause a rough idle. Technician B says that an EGR valve stuck open could cause a rough idle. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because up to 20% of the air needed by the engine at idle speed flows through the PCV valve. If the flow is not correct, the engine idle will be affected. Technician B is also correct because if the EGR valve was stuck partially open at idle, the exhaust gases would dilute the air-fuel mixtures by displacing oxygen. The engine idle would be unstable because of the incorrect mixture. Answer C and D are not correct because both technicians A and B are correct. Flashcard 129. Technician A says the catalytic converter must be replaced if it rattles when tapped. Technician B says a catalytic converter can be defective and not working yet not be clogged. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B. D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because if the catalytic converter rattles when tapped, the substrate is broken and the converter should be replaced. Technician B is also correct because the converter can be poisoned by lead or other chemicals and the active material rendered unable to start the chemical reactions as designed, but yet not be physically clogged. Answers C and D are not correct because both technicians A and B are correct. Flashcard 130. A supercharged engine lacks power. What is not a possible cause? A. Clogged air filter. B. Restricted intercooler. C. Clogged condenser. D. Restricted exhaust. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The correct answer is C. A clogged condenser would affect the operation of the air conditioning system and could increase the coolant temperature by restricting airflow through the radiator, but would not cause a reduction in engine power. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because each of these could cause a reduction in engine power. A clogged air filter would reduce the amount of air entering the engine. A restricted intercooler would also reduce the amount of air entering the engine. A restricted exhaust would reduce the amount of exhaust exiting the engine and create higher than normal back pressure, thereby reducing engine power. Flashcard 131. Technician says that a defective one-way exhaust check valve could cause the air pump to fail. Technician B says that the air should stop flowing to the exhaust manifold when the engine is warm and operating in closed loop. Which technician is correct? A. Only B. B only C. Both A and B, D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because the exhaust could travel up through the defective one-way check valve and damage the air pump as well as the switching valves and hoses. Technician B is also correct because the airflow from the air pump should be switched from the exhaust manifold to the catalytic converter when the engine is operating in closed loop. If the air were to continue to flow to the exhaust manifold, the oxygen sensor would read the air from the air injection reaction AIR pump as being caused by a lean air-fuel mixture. Then the vehicle computer would try to incorrectly enrich the mixture. Answers C and D are not correct because both technicians A and B are correct. Flashcard 132. Two technicians are discussing positive crankcase ventilation PCV valves. Technician A says that if the valve rattles, it is good. Technician B says the PCV valve may still require replacement even if it rattles. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B, D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. The spring inside the PCV valve can lose tension due to heating and cooling cycles during normal engine operation. If the valve does not rattle, then it is defective and should be replaced, but this does not mean that it is serviceable just because it does rattle when shaken. Technician A is not correct saying because the valve rattles, the valve is good. The valve should be replaced when it does not rattle when shaken or whenever recommended to be replaced by the vehicle manufacturer interval. Answers C and D are not correct because technician B only is correct. Flashcard 133. A spark plug has dry, black fluffy deposits. Technician A says this is caused by the engine burning oil. Technician B says that the engine may be operating with a rich air-fuel mixture. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B, D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. Dry, fluffy deposits on spark plugs are usually an indication of a rich air-fuel mixture. Technician A is not correct because the deposits are usually wet when the engine is burning oil because oil does not burn very well. Answers C and D are not correct because they do not indicate that technician B only is correct. Flashcard 134. A 2-foot-long spark plug wire is being tested using an ohmmeter. The wire measures 7.86 k ohms, 7,860 ohms. Technician A says the wire is okay. Technician B says that the wire resistance is higher than the specification for most vehicles. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B, D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is A. Technician A only is correct. The spark plug wire should measure less than 10,000 ohms per foot of length and a reading of 7.86 k ohms, 7,860 ohms is well below the maximum allowable 20,000 ohms. 2 feet times 10,000 equals 20,000 ohms. Technician B is not correct because the resistance is within the specifications for most vehicle manufacturers. Answers C and D are not correct because technician A only is correct. Flashcard 135. Technician A says that moving the position of the crankshaft position CKP sensor can be used to adjust the ignition timing on an engine equipped with coil-on-plug COP type ignition. Technician B says that a misfire can be caused by a defective coil on a COP system. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B, D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is B. Technician B only is correct. Technician B is correct because a coil-on plug ignition system uses a coil for each spark plug, and if it fails, a misfire will occur. Technician A is not correct because adjusting the crankshaft position CKP sensor just adjusts the air gap and does not affect when the signal occurs. Ignition timing is not adjustable on an engine equipped with a waste spark or COP type ignition. Answers C and D are not correct because only Technician B is correct. Flashcard 136. A turbocharged engine is burning oil. Technician A says that a defective turbocharger could be the cause. Technician B says that a clogged PCV system could be the cause. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because if the bushings are worn in the turbocharger, engine oil can get past and be drawn into the turbocharger, where the oil will then flow into the cylinder and be consumed. Technician B is correct because a clogged positive crankcase ventilation PCV system can cause crankcase pressure to increase, which can cause engine oil to be forced into the intake manifold. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 137. Technician A says that low fuel pressure can cause the engine to produce low power. Technician B says that all fuel pumps should be able to pump at least 2 pints 1 liter per minute. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is C. Both technicians are correct. Technician A is correct because an engine will produce less than normal torque and power if not supplied with an adequate amount of fuel under the pressure. Technician B is also correct because most vehicle specifications require that the fuel pump be capable of supplying 1/2 pint of fuel in 15 seconds or 2 pints 1 liter every minute 60 seconds. Answers A, B, and D are not correct because both technicians are correct. Flashcard 138. An engine misfire is being diagnosed. One spark plug wire measured OL on a digital ohmmeter set to the auto range scale. Technician A says that the spark plug wire should be replaced. Technician B says that the spark plug wire is okay. Which technician is correct? A only B. B only C. Both A and B D. Neither A nor B. Pause and think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is. The correct answer is A. Technician A only is correct. The reading on the ohmmeter OL, or over limit, indicates that the spark plug wire is electrically open and lacks continuity. The wire should be replaced. Technician B is not correct because a good spark plug wire should measure less than 10,000 ohms per foot or less than 30,000 ohms for most spark plug wires. The wire being tested did not register any continuity and is, therefore, electrically open and should be replaced. Answers B, C, and D are not correct because only technician A is correct.